Every day you wake up is a new page in the narrative of your life. You write away at this narrative, hoping once you write that final page, it'll be a book worth reading. On September 13th, 2018, my book nearly came to an abrupt halt. For me, that day is nothing short of a miracle. I started that Thursday feeling pretty stressed as I was going to be giving an interview for a local news station about something I was doing at school. While I was just riddled with nerves, I knew I needed to put my best foot forward, and I was prepared to nail that interview. However, it was cut short as I suddenly collapsed on the floor during the middle of it. Over the next few days, I was in a coma until I eventually woke up with family at my bedside, telling me I had what doctors called a sudden cardiac death. With no rhyme or reason as to why this happened, I was just left dumbfounded and hopelessly lost in my sense of security over my life. Everything around me came to a standstill, nothing really mattered except trying to figure out how to move forward from this. Family and friends came to see me, and honestly, I could have been happier to have so much love and support around me, but the fact of the matter was, I was still lost and unsure of the future ahead of me, wondering if I wouldn't just take a step outside the hospital and die right there, or go on my high school graduation stage and die right there. My boredom and hazy days led me to a video game that gave me some semblance of order in the chaos that was my life. It was a game called Dead Cells, a 2D action game where you fight through multiple levels of monsters until you get to the end and face the main boss. It seems simple enough, but the catch was that if you died anywhere in the game, you had to start all the way over from the beginning. Well, you got to keep a few power-ups, you had no checkpoints, you lost all your weapons, and you were left back at square one. Well, you could have always just given up on this challenge. You wouldn't have beaten the game, and you had to overcome these various obstacles and even death itself just to win. I saw this game as a metaphor for my life right there in the hospital. If I was ever going to keep persevering and fighting for the life that I wanted, I needed to envision what was ahead of me. It was stories like in this game that consumed me as a child. Whether they were epic battles of cosmic proportions or fables of woodland creatures, stories had a profound influence on the way that I thought. And I made plenty of my own stories as well. I sometimes just get lost in these stories, always trying to pull some of the best aspects of them back into my real life. As stories truly shaped how I thought as a child, it only made sense that when I nearly died, I would turn to them for guidance and dealing with struggles I just couldn't quite figure out. But I always wondered why it was these stories, whether they came from popular culture or daydreams, helped motivate me and had such an influence on my life. An article from Psychodynamic Practice investigates just how audiovisual mediums such as film, television, and video games could affect how the mind operates and deals with reality. During psychoanalysis, therapists noticed that many of the ideas presented in these fictional realities came up frequently, and they began to delve into all sorts of details of the patient's psyche and its relationship to pop culture narratives. Therapists noticed that much of the content in this entertainment material was being used by their patients to help them deal with the world around them. Now, our minds predominantly operate visually, so when pop culture content, which is primarily visual, makes its way into our lives, it can have a profound influence on the way that we think. And this is especially true for children who would, maybe like myself, who would pull bits and pieces from the stories around them, and they also think and dream in more visual ways. Now, when I almost died, I was distraught, sad, and scared of the future, but instead of reinforcing those bad thoughts with more bad thoughts, I looked to more inspiring stories, just like that video game. And I told myself my own stories as well, the story of my life and how I would move forward from what happened to me. I told myself stories wherein I would get out of bed. I would use my family and friends for support. I'd go back to high school sooner than people would think. I'd keep trying for scholarships. I'd graduate high school with good grades. I'd go to college, and most importantly, I'd have a good life. Now, I wasn't necessarily telling myself stories wherein I felt like I was Captain America and I was just whacking people with a shield. No, I was using these stories as a reminder, a reinforcer of the thoughts that I needed to have if I ever wanted to pull myself out of a mental rut. It's like how they say, surround yourself with people you aspire to be like. Well, the same holds true for stories as well. You must invite stories into your life that parallel ideas or lessons that you want to incorporate into your own. And this idea, this concept of taking in all these ideas and stories and using them in your daily reality This is a process that's known as positive constructive daydreaming. Positive constructive daydreaming is essentially all of the internal content that you manifest yourself that benefits your way of thinking. According to an article from Frontiers in Psychology, positive constructive daydreaming has the potential to alter the mind towards certain positive functions. Of those, there are 4 key ones, which include future planning, creativity, attention cycling, and dishabituation. Future planning entails periods of self-reflection, but can be severely stunted by just general unhappy moods. Creativity involves problem solving and incubating your thoughts, essentially learning from failure in order to move forward with your goals. Attention cycling aims to advance your way of thinking by rotating through various streams of thought. Think of it like tuning into a different radio station to get a different type of music. And dishabituation, which aims to advance your performance on a task by taking short breaks. Now, these constructive functions that are derived from positive constructive daydreaming showcase the power that stories can have on our minds. But how exactly do we constructively daydream in a way that is both positive and meaningful to our lives? Well, Dr. Srini Pillai, a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, explains in his book, Tinker, Dabble, Doodle, Try, just how to go about doing that. First and foremost, you should set out a time to daydream to avoid getting distracted or unrested during your mental expedition. Focus on your internal dialogue and reduce those distractions around you, maybe simply by closing your eyes or moving to a calmer environment. Try and do a simple task that doesn't use all too much brain power, or simply do nothing at all if that works better. And try to understand that the mind may try and resist this daydreaming process, but take it one step at a time, relax, and let your mind guide you toward your daydreaming goals. It's with knowing how to utilize this positive, constructive daydreaming process that you can begin to utilize the power of stories for the betterment of your life. To give you an example of this, when I went to the theater a few years ago to see the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, the story of the famous singer Freddie Mercury, I took a great deal from it. From the actor's portrayal, I saw the passion to a craft Freddie Mercury had, his presence on stage, and his ability to captivate not only a live audience, but nearly the entire world, and that resonated powerfully with me. From this, I learned sort of actions, things I could incorporate back in my real life, such as how to give a speech with a bit more character, or how to walk with more confidence. And the story of Freddie Mercury ultimately made its way into my constructive daydreams and my life. Another story that had a profound impact on me was one that I read when I was in middle school. It was called The Giver. The Giver told the story of a young boy who lived in a dystopian society, devoid of all the memories that made the world itself. And these were things such as music, art, the feeling on a cool summer day, or the harsh pain of a sunburn. The boy eventually learned of all these memories shielded away from society and left his own to find a better one. This gave a younger, more timid version of myself the hardy spirit to learn all that I could about the world around me. And of course, there's a story of a game called Dead Cells, which reminded me I have a lot of life left in me, and I need to keep pushing and fighting for the life that I want. It's with all these stories that I'm just captivated by copious amounts of ideas and lessons that I can bring back into my real life, because after nearly dying, I want to live. I want to experience all that the world has to offer and make my life one to remember when they tell stories about years to come. There's a man by the name of Irvin Yalom, an American psychiatrist, who once said, "Someday soon, perhaps in 40 years, there will be no one alive who has ever known me. That is when I will truly be dead, when I exist in no one's memory." I thought a lot about how someone very old is the last living individual to have known some person or cluster of people. When that person dies, the whole cluster dies too, vanishes from the living memory. I wonder who that person will be for me, whose death will make me truly dead. Now, it's inevitable that one day we will all die, but it's by knowing how to utilize the stories all around us that we all make ourselves, implementing them through positive, constructive daydreams, that we can make our story and our lives one to remember, one they'll certainly talk about years to come. Thank you.